Alright, let's do this. Let's do a revised version 2.0 build. Alright, this is a 7-link dual curse, 6,500 health, Chaos Molten Strike champion. So, first of all, this is a fucking expensive build. I would not suggest doing this build unless you've got the time and the currency to put into it. I've been playing this for the entire Betrayal series season. It's expensive. Like, we're talking, we've got a Chaos Heart, we've got a Grelwood Shank, we've got Wind Shrieks, which, let's not confuse that with Wind Scream, which are worthless. Wind Shrieks are fucking expensive. We've got the Nomad, not the Magnet Belt. And we've got in Presence a fire variant, which at the time cost me a shitload because the market was royally fucking me, but you know, now it's all hunky-dory. Yeah, previously, I only had about 6,500 health. Then I had this awesome Chaos drop. Now, I got it to 33% fire damage, not the max cap 40%. But anyway, let's get into this. So, how the fuck do we get this mechanic working where we have, essentially, what is a 7-link fucking build? Alright, so it's to do with this sword here. So I'll go into the reason why we have the 7th link, but basically we are proccing Molten Strike with added fire damage support, combustion, plus built into our sword, because it's a I believe this is an elder sword. It has level 16 Ruthless, level 18 Ancestral Call, which is important for clearing packs and mobs, and level 20 Multi-Strike. Now, because the champion default Ascendancy is that we get Fortify permanently, we also have permanent Fortify, and that gives us our essentially our 7-link build. I really need to do a build guide, like a written build guide on this, because this took fucking ages to balance. Now, how do we have 2 curses? Alright, we have 2 curses via Poacher's Mark, which gives us on hit, essentially increasing our on hit life gain for every projectile, which in this case is a Molten Strike orb, hitting enemies, which basically gives us a ridiculous sustain, and you'll see it in the video clip, I guess the gameplay that I'll put into this next. The second curse that we have is Flammability. Now, this is obviously a blasphemy curse, but the reason why we can run 2 curses is for 2 reasons. Number one, normally this would take about 35% mana pool. Same with this, 35% mana pool. But what we have are 2 specific items which basically nullify our cost down to 1 curse. So firstly, in order to get 2 curses, we're running Wind Shriek Reinforced Greaves. Now, the reason why I've picked these Greaves, number one, 25% movement speed is great. 12% elemental damage. Now, I'm pretty sure that can go... No, it can go up to 20% elemental, so we've got a low roll. It also gives us Auto Resist, which is something that we need because, you know, Auto Resist is great. Now, the other benefit of this is you can apply an additional curse. And if you can apply an additional curse, you can have 2 curse auras. Now, obviously we're running a couple of heralds, and I'll explain why we're running these 2 heralds shortly. But obviously, if we were running 2 25% heralds, which we're running here, plus 2 35% curses, that far exceeds our max cap for our mana pool, which is only realistically 100%. How we get around this is we use this awesome little thing. We basically use an Impresence Onyx Amulet, and what this does, if we read, is it gives us Flammability has 100% reduced mana reservation. What that basically means is we can run a blasphemy, we can blasphemy a second curse, which our boots will let us do because we can run 2 curses, and we have no reservation for the second curse. So not only are we 7-linking on our main hit ability, we're also running 2 curses, and we're also running 2 heralds. Now, the reason why we use Herald of Purity and Herald of Ash is obviously Herald of Purity increases base DPS, and if we have a look at Molten Strike, it converts physical damage to fire damage. So you actually want to stack physical damage, because the more phys damage, the more fire damage you have. Inversely, Herald of Ash actually gives you an additional 15% as extra fire damage, and it also gives you 25% overkill damage when you max out, and 36% more burning damage. So basically, you're proccing a crazy amount of fire damage based off your base damage, which is great. So essentially, that's how the mechanic of this build works. And obviously our sustain is not based on leech, but it's on hit. So basically we have a Thief's Torment Ring, and I'll go through right now actually the gearing outside of. So the two key things that we need in this instance, well, let's call it three key things to make this work, is essentially, and obviously you can do this different ways. Now, you don't need to have a single sword. How I was originally running this was obviously a 6 length. Which I believe I have in here. I was running a at Series Splendor Sacrificial Garb, which was 6 linked, and basically I did have my concentrated effect, and I was running Ancestral Call and Multi-Strike separately, but since I've taken that away. And obviously I can afford to have a Chaos Heart because I've got this sword. If I didn't have this sword, I wouldn't be running Chaos Heart, and the reason why I'm running Chaos Heart is because now I have a life pool of 6,500 health. Essentially, that's the mechanic of this. It makes me tanky, it makes me run dual curse of 4 auras, including 2 blasphemy curse auras, and it's 7 linking, which gives me damage reduction, increased damage, and obviously massive clear speed. Now there is a disadvantage to this, is previously I was able to run elemental hit, which would proc me up to 100,000 on my DPS bar. Now they can get as far as about 65, 67,000. So it slows me down just a little bit, but where that sort of doesn't really matter is if we have a look at my stat for penetration. Where the fuck are you? It's not telling me. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? God damn it, I can't find it. Should come up with something to say penetrating whatever. Elemental penetration. I can't remember what it's called. Yeah. Anyway. That's annoying that I can't find where that should just come up. Anyway, essentially my my aura is giving me the ability to penetrate 42% of fire resistance plus, and I'll go through my skill tree soon. The nodes that I've selected also give me additional penetration as well. So we're just all about the penetration in this build. The more penetrating, the better, is essentially the way that we're playing this build. And I believe it was up here. There is a node here. Damn it! I hate it when you put something together and you just can't fucking remember what the fuck you've done. Anyway, so essentially we're penetrating things, and penetrating things is good in this case. Anyway, let's go through in a little bit more detail. That's the basic gist of the mechanics, so let's go through in a little bit more detail the actual build itself. So obviously I've got a Grellwood Shank. This one's been corrupted so that I have Resolute Technique, so I don't crit, but essentially everything I hit has a 100% chance to hit 100% accuracy. The obvious benefit of this is increased attack speed. It also gives me an 80% buff on my armor when I'm stationary. So what you'll see here is in my defense, I have 16,000 armor. I had more, but you don't really need more than that. But and that's stationary. When I move, I have 7,500. Now, bear in mind, I also have like a crazy amount of evasion rating. The other thing with Resolute Technique is it actually takes away my evasion rating. So essentially, I can move around. You know, I've got 5,600 evasion, so 32% chance of not getting hit. And then when I stop, I basically go up to about, what's that, 61, 63%, 65% damage reduction on from physical. So that's pretty good. So we start with the Growwood Shank. Also gives us 2 additional projectiles, which is good. We want to shoot more projectiles. It means we basically leech, we don't leech, we get more on-hit health back into our pool, which is what we want. So obviously these are expensive, so I would suggest, if you're going to start this build, running Ichimojos, I think that's how you pronounce it, and running 2 of those. Now, it just means if you're partying, your auras won't work, but you know, if you can get around that, you can get around that. Obviously the next thing I'm running is my 6-linked sword. Now I picked this up for like 20 chaos, just out of convenience. Physical damage is crazy on this thing. Obviously it's been master crafted, so it's quite good, and it gives me dex, which is also a good stat to have on this build as well, because you might become a little bit deficient in areas. And 20% attack speed, some area effect. Basically it's just an overall good item. Now I could corrupt this, but I'm not going to do that at the risk of ruining this sword. Yeah, so that's basically the Spirit of the Sword, my Corsair sword. Obviously you'll be running in Presence, so you can have 0 reservation on mana for flammability. You'll need Wind Shrieks because you want to run that additional curse, as already discussed. Now my helm is just a lion pelt, but I also got great rolls on all resist, 105 health, and 10% increased rarity, so that's also good. And obviously I uberlab this to get 40% increased Molten Strike damage as well, so I've got an enchant on there for that, so that's good, beefing up my damage as well. On my build in particular, because this is basically an ultra endgame build, this is a boss killer, by the way. I've got a Kaim's Heart Glorious Plate, obviously 500 health, and 33% increased fire damage at the expense of sockets, hence why we have our Corsair sword. The next thing you'll definitely need is a Thief's Torment Prismatic Ring. There's a few reasons why. Now you can only use 1 ring if you are using this, but it also has a 50% reduction to curses, so things like map curses don't hurt you as much as they normally would, i.e. Temporal Chains is basically ineffective, or half as effective as what it once was. It also gives you 58 life on hit, and because we're shooting 5 projectiles out per, you know, we're doing 4 hits per second, times 5 is 20 projectiles per second essentially. We're basically clawing back 58 times 20, so that's not bad, and mana at the same time, so that's pretty good. It also gives us Aura Resist, and this has increased quantity of items found, which obviously helps with our Magic Find proccing. The next thing we're running is the Nomad, which is basically gives us almost a 40% global fizz damage buff, a whole shit ton of strength, whole shit ton of dex, 50% increased flask out charges gain, so your flasks regenerate quicker for pack mobs, 24% all elemental resist if you have over 200 health, and you'll do that easily in this build. And here's the best part of this: you get 41 increased projectile attack damage while you have at least 200 dex. Now I'm hoping, yeah, I do. So I have 297 dex, which means every single projectile that my Molten Strike shoots does 41% increased projectile damage, which makes it even more powerful. And the last item that I'm running is Dread Knuckle, just a set of antique gauntlets. Obviously I need intelligence to run, you know, things like combustion and flammability curses, so I've rolled this with intelligence, fire resist. I've got 17% increased rarity for Magic Find, and 111 maximum life. Now I could realistically change these, but right now I need them for my intelligence because my character's a bit dumb, which you can see here. I've only got 124 int. Flasks, I've got a immunity to bleed eternal life flask that I rolled. Nothing fancy, just basically gets rid of bleed because that can really fuck you up. I'm running 3 Blood of the Korai flasks. Just obviously sometimes you need that boost against bigger bosses. You might take some critical hits, so you know these are great flasks to use. and also the Wise Oak Bismuth Flask, which gives you reduced damage. You'll take reduced damage from elemental attacks, as well as it increases damage penetration when you're hitting, which is good. Now you could use, I think it's not Taste of Hate, I think it's some Sun Flask, can't remember the name. That'll give you another additional projectile. I'm not using that because it's 1x, and despite having, I think, 9x in the pool, I don't feel like spending 1x on that. So I'm not going to do that. Anyway, that's the basic gearing for this. If we go to if we go to our skill tree, essentially we're basically just building down from the Duelist skills. We're going to pick up these damage nodes down to Master of the Arena. We want Art of the Gladiator down to Dervish. We want to pick up the Golem's Blood nodes around here. We also want to have Cloth and Chain down to Ambidexterity. And then we want to go to the right, pick up Thick Skin and the associated health nodes. We want to get Fencing because we need the one-handed melee damage. Then up to Quick Step, then up to Finesse. You want to pick up Heart of Oak for increased health and life regeneration. Then Aspect of the Panther because it gives you some dual wielding damage and also increased block and more health. Then Aspect of the Lynx, which just gives you more damage, more attack speed. Then we want to pick up Herbalism up to Brutal Blade, which gives us single-handed sword damage. Then we want to come back, we want to go to the left, pick up this node here, and we want to use the Wildfire Gem, which gives us 2 more additional projectiles for our Molten Strike, which makes us even more powerful. This is necessary for this build, you will need this. Then we'll pick up Berserking and Duality, and then obviously the Constitution nodes up here. And then we'll go back to you'll finish up around abouts in here, and we'll start picking up, these life nodes, Heart of the Warrior, Born to Fight. You're going to pick up Strong Arm and up to Barbarism, and obviously we'll just pick up a few extra nodes here. You don't really need these two. In particular right now, I probably don't need these, but more health is always good. And then obviously your Ascendancies, you are going to be a champion in this situation. You could play this a Juggernaut build, be even more tankier, but right now I've proved champions probably better than Jug in this situation. And we want to pick up Fortify is pretty much the first thing we want to rush. Then we want to pick up Conqueror, so we get Taunt on hit, and then Worthy Foe, and that'll just give you increased damage. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm trying to think, what else do we want to do? To confirm, this build has killed Shaper. It's actually very easy to kill Shaper, and you'll see very shortly that mapping of this build is incredibly easy and it's incredibly fast. Oh, we need to do skill gems. We don't have that either. So obviously, skill gems for our Molten Strike, we're going to have a sword with, you're going to definitely need Ancestral Call and Multi-Strike by default. You will need both of those. This just happened to have Ruthless, which gives it a further little bit of a buff, but if it's got something else, like added fire damage support or something like that, that's great too. You then want to have Molten Strike, added fire damage support, and Combustion. Those are the essentially these 3 gems plus Ancestral Call and Multi-Strike are necessary. You will definitely need that. As a 5-link, it'll do crazy amounts of damage. Next in our helm, I've got Herald of Ash, Herald of Purity with Blasphemy and Poacher's Mark. Obviously I'm running a lot of auras, so that works well. In my boots, I've got Flammability and Power to beef up my Flammability, and the other benefit of running Empower on this is once this actually levels up, this will beef up Flammability's level, and that'll be with no extra mana cost as well on our reservation, because our Impresence is basically nullified our mana cost to 0, which is great. Obviously a second blasphemy, and I was running vulnerability at one point, which I was running a different in presence, the fizz damage in presence, but that's just a redundant. No, you don't really need that. Realistically, I could just chuck another empower, or I could go and enhance gem or something like that too. In our gauntlets, we're running custom damage taken, make sure it's level 1, blood rage at level 5, we're maxing out increased duration and immortal call at level 1, and then over here for our movement speed, our movement skill, which is, you know, while we're moving like a crazy motherfucker here, we're running whirling blades with increased attack speed and blood magic, because we regen health at a crazy rate. 400, what's that, 541.6 per second, which is really good. Yeah, I think, what else are we missing here? No, none of that. There we go, it's Y. I think I have collected Soul of Solaris, which is just physical damage reduction, and obviously take no extra capture Jorah's Edge Sky, take no extra damage from critical strikes if you have taken a critical strike recently. You know, you don't want to take 2 crits in a row, especially when you're versing betrayal bosses that will fuck you up. 50% chance to avoid ailments from critical strikes as well, so that's just reducing the chance of getting fucked up even more. And obviously I've got while stationary gain 2% additional physical damage reduction every second up to a maximum of 8, and then I've maxed it out while stationary gain 0.5% of life regeneration per second every second up to a maximum of 2. So basically that works in hand with our resolute technique, and iron reflexes when stationary. Sorry, iron reflexes is what that's going to work with. Yeah, that's basically how this build works. Obviously you can see by this that it is being quite successful in smashing through content, delves well, it takes down bosses even better, basically melts Shaper, which is great because Shaper's a bit of an asshole. I haven't done a video on Shaper, now I've got this build to where I want it. This is actually the first build I've been successful in just absolutely destroying Shaper with no effort whatsoever. Anyway, yeah, I'll roll some B-roll gameplay, and you can see how this build works. And yeah, thanks for watching.